From Baltimore, Maryland, this is the Stoop Sessions, a One Hope podcast. Join us for conversations about ministry on the stoop. Learn more about our work at www.onehope.gives.
Welcome to the Stoop Sessions.
Welcome. Here we are.
On another stoop.
Can we say whose stoop this is?
Yeah, affectionately. I mean, roll up if you want
I don't think there's any indicator as to where it is.
No,
so
and
this
it's
is
like a floral print sign.
Whose stoop are we on?
We're on my stoop.
This is the Greer stoop.
Affectionately became our stoop 4 years ago, and we love it.
It's a nice stoop. In this little enclave section of the neighborhood.
Covered by the shade of the
quiet.
tree. Which prophet was that? It was underneath the tree, but it didn't go well. Oh, Jonah.
Oh.
But then the worm ate it.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's not what happens here.
These trees are solid.
Okay, that's cool. Or no, what disciple was that Jesus saw that was underneath the tree, and he's like, oh, you found out that I was under the tree?
That was Nathaniel.
All right. You're good. Come on through. All right, well, that has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about today. We're talking about rest, and we're finishing part 2. But first, we should say who we are. I'm Stephanie Greer.
I'm Joel Kurz.
Mm-hmm. And my unborn child.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk about work and rest part 2.
Yeah.
Because we started this conversation and then we kind of got to a place where I said, I think we should do part 2 on this.
Yeah.
And so here we are doing a part 2, and we're trying to squeeze it in because it could be any day now.
7 days.
7 days. The Greer family is going to bring another child into this world.
Yeah, and you get to visit and talk to so many other people on their stoops.
It's exciting.
There's a little FOMO.
So how many children is this for you?
Number 3.
Number 3. And I think you were pregnant for Sevi, number 1.
Yeah.
When we first started the podcast.
It's true.
Right?
So
here we are, number 3.
Here we are.
And your due date is
June 10th. I don't even know what that means.
So today is
around June 10th. It depends on when you're
we're
gonna get
getting
it.
very close.
You'll either maybe
we're a couple. It could be
depending on our help. You'll get this on June 11th, and then I would have already had a baby. And then if you're not on our email list, you should be, because you'll see said picture of said baby.
You know what would make this go viral?
What would make it go viral?
Is if you went into labor on the stoop.
I know.
And then I called Kevin and had your
ran
parents come out.
over here and they'd just be feeding us goat. Like, they don't know what to do in panic situations.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
They just feed you. But yeah, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to go into labor.
We'll get through the end of this episode at least.
Yeah, and we get to talk about.
This might be the last episode for you for a little while.
Yeah, but hopefully not too.
Hopefully, we'll see. We'll see what the Lord does.
We're debating if I should do a podcast from the hospital bed, and it's still. I may do a little.
And we should have all of your kids on the stoop once they're all, out in the world.
And we'll talk about missional living on the block.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Okay, so that's
we'll do a part 3.
All right, I can't wait. But for today, I think we, in thinking about our rest, how it works, there is no other psalm. There's a lot of psalms, but one of my favorites is Psalm 131.
Yeah.
Genuinely one of my favorites. It is the run-to if I'm having a panic attack, if I'm just really happy, if I need to remember how to rest. If I've just walked out of your office crying, it is my run-to. So, let's talk about it. Unless you want to talk about something else.
No. You say you walk out of my office crying. You're going to make the listener think that there's this contentious relationship in the office
not at all.
At the Garden Church.
Not at all. I'm a verbal processor, if you can't tell from watching this podcast already. And so it's when I'm verbally processing.
You just have easy tears.
Yeah, especially being pregnant. And I've been pregnant quite a bit.
But Psalm 131, though, is a go-to.
It's good. It's a psalm of ascent. They're going up.
Yeah.
The Israelites are walking up. They're remembering that they're not quite home. And there's so many parallels. I think when you think about being an outsider moving into a new city, there's so many parallels when you think about your own heart as we await for Christ to come back. It is chock full. It's also, four verses?
Yeah.
So...
3 verses.
3. Okay.
So Psalm 131, what we want to do is just use Psalm 131 as a bit of fuel for discussion.
Yeah.
And talk about the theme of work and rest through the problem and the solution that we see in Psalm 131. But let me read the psalm, actually. Can I do that?
Please do it.
It says, "O Lord, my heart is not lifted up.
Mm-hmm.
My eyes are not raised too high.
Yeah.
I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. But I have calmed and quieted my soul like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. O Israel, hope in the Lord, from this time forth and forevermore.
Case closed.
Case
Done.
closed. So here is the idea, and that is that our spiritual rest is not entirely or hardly disconnected from physical rest, that the two are intertwined. And a sense of spiritual busyness can also weary the body.
Yeah.
And so I'm reading this book, Zach Eswine,
The Imperfect Pastor.
The Imperfect Pastor.
So good.
Have you read it?
Yeah, I don't know. I like some pastors.
Hey, it's good for, even if you're not a pastor, it's just a good book for Christians. And that's the point I'm going to make.
Limitations.
Exactly. So one of the things he says at the beginning of the book is that when he became a pastor, he really wanted to be more than just a pastor.
Yeah.
And for him, being a pastor was a platform to kind of get to something else. And his idea was, what is something else? It's speaking on a big stage. It's conferences. It's articles and writing books. And so there's this sense of, I've got to have something marvelous. I've got to have something more than what is. And where I think that's so relatable is, even if you're not a pastor such as yourself or just any other, regular Christian working a job, is that we all have that sense of, it's hard to sometimes just live in the moment that we have and recognize that what is actually really good. Yeah. But we always think that, where I'm at now is just sort of like a temporal launch point for where I'm trying to get.
And the thing I think that he even talks about in that book is like the sense of striving isn't striving towards necessarily what's godly, even though in ministry it's wrapped up in this perception of godliness, which is even more dangerous, when we think about the fact that it's like, oh no, I want people on my block to be saved. I've been on this block, I've been evangelizing it. I didn't have a church plant team come out and I feel like I'm staring at my failures. But it creates this sense of like, this is the new goal. Let me strive towards this. And it actually brings unrest. Yeah. And it's like kind of nestled in this present of like, no, you should be ambitious. Yeah. And I think as we see in different texts, not just Psalm 131, but 1 Thessalonians talking about living a simple life. And so I do think God calls us to a simple life. Yeah. And it can be really complicated when we mix it in with this, if I have this, then.
And I think even for just a regular church member as well, you have this. You could have a sense of like, man, I should be doing something great for God, and I'm not feeling that right now in this church. Maybe I did at one point, but it's kind of gotten a little stale, and I don't feel like I'm doing great things. Life is pretty ordinary. I still have to do my laundry. Yeah. I still have to put the kids to bed. And it's very ordinary, and actually, Ordinary is a book written by Michael Horton. Which I think is a bit of a reaction to David Platt's book, Radical. Yeah. Radical is a book which I don't think it's a good book.
It's beautiful,
but there's a sense in which it can leave the Christian thinking, man, I've got to do something radical. Yeah. Michael Horton was sort of responding, saying, it's actually the ordinary. Yeah.
That allows you to actually do radical things spiritually, but we don't always see it. Yeah. That's the beauty of it.
And this big idea, though, of I've got to be doing more than what God has currently given me, I think is what Psalm 131 speaks to and addresses.
A couple of things it doesn't address is that we should be lazy. So it's not saying a lack of striving. Like we talked about in our other podcast, it's not really necessarily like I just sit and twiddle my thumbs. It is genuinely to say, I think when David is talking about I've not lifted up my eyes to something too lofty, it's not him being like, I think I'm just going to sit here on this couch and eat chicken. Chicken sounds good. It's because I smell it. Or chips, or just veg out. He's actually saying, I don't know. What do you think he's saying? He's not concerning himself with what? Like, what would that be in contrast to, we're not saying laziness. We're not saying that you don't strive. Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes we hear this and people say, okay, well, then that means I need to kill my ambitions. Yeah. So I just want to, we kind of talked about it, and I'm just saying,
talked about this a little
let's
bit
already
episode,
give one quick disclaimer.
I think it's just good to recognize that ambition is good. Ambition is godly. Yeah, desires are godly. Passion is godly. I think we are ambitious in various ways. What we could talk about, unruly ambition, unruly desire, is when these things take the throne of our heart and they begin to rule and reign.
Yeah.
You know, and so it could look like a good ambition of like, I want to graduate from this program, turning into this obsession of like, I cannot be okay with myself until I graduate. I can't rest. I don't have any sense of identity until I graduate. Or maybe it's an ambition to do something that you actually don't have the opportunity to do. I feel like I should be overseas doing missions, but God hasn't given me the opportunity. Or I feel like I should write a book, but you're not a good writer, and God hasn't given you that opportunity to do so. Or, you know, we can go down a long list here, but my point is I think that, yes, ambition is good, desire is good, but all of these good things can become unruly and essentially idols.
Yeah, and I think I love you kind of making, we know the clear, like Galatians 5, unruly, like passion and enmity and anger and all these things that seem like, but those are the things that get bred in us sometimes when we pick up a passion and make it the central goal. It's like, wait, what is God doing? It's like, no, I don't, he's not doing this, and this, because if he was, I would be here, and here. And I think that it's helpful for church members, church planners, teams, to really go back to the simplistic.
Yeah.
Because they keep themselves from that. Hi. You're good. Is it still on? We're just making a video about different things that we encounter in church. We go to church just right down here on the block.
You're welcome to come. The Garden Church.
The Garden Church. All right, you too. With her cute blue hair.
Do you know her?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, we live near a bus stop, so we see a lot of like.
Love it.
Yeah, there's a couple repeats.
So I think this is a big, broader cultural problem too, not just with Christians. Let me read you another quote here. Philosopher Jacques Ellul, he says, the first great fact which emerges from our our civilization is that today everything has become means. He puts that in quotation marks. There is no longer an end. We do not know where we are going. We have forgotten our collective ends, and we possess great means. We set huge machines in motion in order to arrive nowhere. So what I think he means is that the machines represent all of our activity, you know, all of the things that we're doing, the degrees, the education, the driving, the routines, you know, the boxes that we check. But there's a sense in which there's no end to it. You know, it's these waters. It's kind of what Ecclesiastes talks about, or it is, where he says the waters are tired. You know, they just run all day, and they just kind of run back into the same oceans where they came from, and so I think that part of what we feel is a very modern problem as far as just a sense of we have to arrive at something, but the way life is, there really is no arrival. It's just always the next thing.
And we've learned that when you arrive at the thing you thought you'd arrive at, it doesn't quite give you the satisfaction that you quite wanted.
That's right.
If it is not genuinely just arriving at the fact that Christ is all.
Yeah.
I mean, really, that's it. It's like, oh man, I got this degree, and then you think, what other post-back degree do you remember this conversation where I was pursuing a degree? We're not against getting education, but you're like, why are you doing it? And I'm like, I've always wanted to do it. I just want to prove to myself that I can do it. And 1 semester later and 15 stress pounds, I'm like, whoa, the stuff I was actually looking for, Christ actually had me doing in my church already. Because I was like, I want to be more intentional with my sisters, and I want to be able to think through that more. Yeah. Was doing that, just being able to just be present at Bible study. In fact, I was less present because I was like working on so many assignments, or I just want to know God's word deeper. It's actually, I was reading it. So it's not a hit necessarily towards more education, but it was interesting that the striving, and in the middle of it, I thought this is the only way to execute this goal. And I think because you weren't in the middle of that situation, you're like, actually, there's a lot of other ways to execute that goal, and you already, the thing you're striving for, God in Christ is already Christ is already helping you do that.
Yeah, I think it's we feel like we have to overqualify everything we say because we're not saying that getting a degree is a bad thing, you know. But maybe to put this into a broader sense, I think we could say this: there is a spiritual source of unrest. Yeah. And we see this in Psalm 131, and that is pride.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're talking about pride and how pride can have the effect of causing us or driving us, maybe we allow it to drive us toward seeking this thing as if this thing is what we need to rest.
Yeah.
And so then it just becomes a source of unrest.
And then you become conflicted with more and more limitations, and instead of those limitations actually pointing you towards Christ, they breed contempt and bitterness for the very flock that you're among, for the people that you encounter, for the people that even highlight different constructive things to work on. Everything becomes an enemy.
It's good.
And you're not rested. Yeah.
So verse 1, O Lord, my heart is not lifted up. My eyes are not raised too high. I do not occupy myself with things too great and too marvelous for me. That's where I get this idea of pride. He's not saying that we can't have vision.
Yeah.
But what he is saying is his eyes are not lifted up in the sense of wanting more than what God has put in his hands.
Yeah. You know, in the middle of all of the post-2020, in the middle of 2020, all of the social media, I think competition to act like we were actually omnipresent. It was like, I can chime in on all these other things. It was before 2020, but I feel like when we were all in our houses, we're like, how many news headlines can we Google? How many things can we suddenly become the expert on?
Right.
And that would be an example of saying, you know, we came up with this phrase where I said, I'm just going to stay in the 21217. Like, I actually need to just stay right here and see what God is doing in this way.
Yeah.
And pray. I think spiritual rest says, I actually need to have a dependence on the Lord and not a dependence on my own self to bring all these things about. And so I think that phrase of like, I'm just going to stay in my zip code wasn't a cop-out, but it was an actual acceptance of my own limitations. And I think it helped me focus on like, all right, where do I actually have to trust the Lord? Where do you actually have to grow in?
Yeah.
Versus the smoke screen of let me attempt to be omnipresent and know all things. All those things are attributes that only God holds.
Yeah.
So that's where the pride comes, where it's like, oh no, I want to be God in essence. That's what I'm saying when my eyes are lifted up too high. And yeah,
and I think part of it is to believe that we can really strategize our life in such a way that we can accomplish
more ideas, more meetings, more to-do steps.
Right. So Peter Marin, I read this really great little piece by him where he basically said the Reformation wasn't strategized. Luther didn't sit down one day with a bunch of fellow future reformers and say, let's get a think tank together to figure out how we can do the impossible and recover the gospel and preach justification by faith and start a movement that's going to go across the globe. What happened was they just simply in the moment did the right thing. You know what I'm saying? They sought godliness, they sought truth, they found truth, they proclaimed truth, but
had conviction.
Yeah, had conviction, and probably a lot of it felt very ordinary. You know, you're getting up, you're preparing a talk on Romans for your students, and one thing Luther says is he preached the word, and then he sleeps and drinks beer with his friends, and while he's doing these things, the Lord is converting souls. You know, meaning there's an ordinariness to great things.
Yeah.
And so I think having our eyes set too high, occupying ourselves with things too marvelous for us. I think that what that's saying is almost believing that we're gods. You know, believing that we can, in our own power, come up with strategies and ideas and visions and plans, and then implement it in such a way that we can change the world or do great things. We want the world to change. We want great things to change. You know, God has given us an intellect to strategize and to plan.
Yeah.
You know, we just, we'll talk about this in a future episode, but we just saw a wonderful revitalization take place at Southwest, and that thing was planned out 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And God blessed the plan.
Every step
so you
of the
can't
process,
accuse me of saying, oh, Joel's saying don't plan or don't strategize.
Don't have a lack of vision and ambition.
Right.
It's saying godly ambition says, I'm doing this with the limits that he's given me, trusting him for what he will do. Even if I don't see it. Because I do think if we were like, this is what success would look like, that's where trouble comes. And I think, man, I can't imagine any other place. Well, it happens everywhere, but we live on this block. We're in this context where, man, it can just get really muddled with the idea of success, especially when conversion is slow. And sanctification is a process.
Yeah.
And so I think it can really crush the soul of any minister in a hard place, a spiritually hard place. When you start to concern yourselves with things too far and too lofty and outside of your limitations, instead of concerning yourself with preaching the word. Yeah,
fill in this blank. Things should be
blank.
You know, what are we filling that blank with? And why can't I rest right now?
Yeah.
Because things aren't that.
Yeah.
David Powlison, he said, he personifies pride, all right? And this is what he says. Pride says, I just want a little respect and appreciation. Of course, I want the home appliances to work and the car mechanic to be honest. That's pretty normal. I want approval and understanding to be included. Is that too much to ask? I want the church to thrive, my sermon to go well, the worship to be biblical. It's for God, after all. I want satisfaction and compensation for the ways others did me wrong. If others would just own up and then treat me right, I don't want much if I only had better health, a little more money, a more meaningful job, nicer clothes, a restful vacation. Then I'd be satisfied. I want a measure of success, just a bit of recognition as an athlete, a beauty, an intellectual, a musician, a leader, a mother. I want control. Who doesn't? Comfort, ease, convenience, why not? I want to feel good. Doesn't God want me to feel good? I want to feel good about myself, to have more self-confidence, to believe in myself. I want my way. I want the goodies. I want glory. I want God to do my will. I want to be God. Doesn't everybody? Close with that.
I honestly think that's it.
I mean, that's pride. That's how pride works.
I don't think there's much more to say.
Yeah.
And so
And this is the too marvelous. You know, it is, I want to step into this role that I do not deserve to be in.
When I think that shift that the psalmist makes is Israel. I love the communal, the invitation to rest, to the whole,
I'm going to read verse 2.
Talking about,
But I've calmed and quieted my soul. Like a weaned child with its mother. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. O Israel, hope in the Lord from this time forth forevermore.
And the picture of a weaned child clicks way more now than it ever has, but there's going to be such a contrast, you know. In 7 days, I'll deliver a child that will not be a calm and quieted soul when they do not have their source of sustenance. When they think the source of sustenance has even walked outside of the room, they're like, and I'll see that in contrast with 2 other kids who they know that they'll get what they need. They know that everything that they need, their hands will have for them.
Yeah.
They know where they'll find their food, and they can continuously go to the source themselves. And so, man, what a contrast of what that looks like to say, how do I walk in this place where I trust God, I'm hoping God in my context, on my block, in a way that's not frantic and wondering if God will feed me next, but expecting and then remembering the ways that he has. And that just keeps you like, I don't need to be a scholar. I don't need to be all these other things. My church doesn't have to have 90 people. We don't all have to know Hebrew and Greek, although it's helpful. Or we can care about the actual ins and outs of every member. We can help encourage members to be involved. We can say hard things. We can actually correct each other in love. We can pray with each other. All these other things that God has given us limitlessness for, while understanding our limitations. And so I think
and so that would be humility that you're describing. And I think that's the spiritual source of rest is humility. I think we physically rest as we spiritually rest, as we rest in God, as we recognize that there are things outside of our control. I love your personal analogy of your kids, and I think that's nailing what he means by a weaned child. You know, the kid that's the brand new baby that is crying all of the time. They don't know how to ask for, they feel their belly, and that's it, and there's a lack of love there. Like, that new baby doesn't really love you. I hate to tell you that.
Well, it doesn't know how to make sense of all that's happening.
It's
and there is a fear of like, will I get this again? Hence the franticness.
And I think as newborn babes in Christ, there can be that franticness, like you said. There can be a lack of love for God in such a way that we just need what we need. And then as we're weaned, we're children, we're still dependent on God.
Completely.
But if he says, no, now is not the time to eat, we learn to trust him and to wait and that's humility.
Him being the portion is what we wait on versus the attempt to be God ourselves. Yeah.
Right.
And true humility says, I don't want to be. Actually, would be a horrible God.
Yeah.
It's proven. There'd be no Genesis 3 if we didn't prove that we don't manage ourselves well. So with that said, hope in God.
Hope in God, hope in God.
Yeah.
And let's just get real practical
Yeah.
here. So this allows us then, let's take it back to what we were talking about in the last episode. It allows us to rest. It allows us to go home and be able to say, I'm like a weaned child. I'm trusting God right now. I don't have what I feel like I need or like what I want.
Yeah.
But I'm submitting those desires to the Lordship of Christ. I'm doing what I can with the little bit that he's given me. I'm trying to be faithful with the small things. I'm recognizing that it's in faithfulness of the small things that he does great things. And so I'm just trusting him with all of these little offerings that I have to give to see what he does with it.
Sacrificially giving in those offerings. It's like, I'm actually concerned, not concerned in the frantic way, but my concern is with what God has given my hands to do that day, that moment.
Yeah.
And that's so applicable for every aspect. As we rev up for summer, as there's so many goals and missions that churches have of like, what do we do? How do we yield all these opportunities? VBS has to be perfect. We need to have the best theme. And we remember that God actually calls us to be concerned of hoping in him and being dependent on him.
So wrap it up. Number 1, dump unruly ambitions.
Dump 'em.
Number 2, develop a dependent-like trust.
Yeah. Number 3.
Trust-filled dependence. Let's call it that.
Trust-filled dependence.
Develop trust-filled dependence. Number 3?
Number 3 is hope in God and keep
in
hoping
God.
in God. I'd add that from this time forth and forevermore.
Good.
And yay for the time where it'll be perfect to do that. But until then, that's what we strive after, the hoping in God part.
Yeah. So may we work well, may we rest well.
Even wellier. I'm just kidding.
Well here.
I had to
Next
end
time,
incorrectly.
so this may be it for a season. We'll be praying for you.
Okay, I'm like getting like, what's happening?
And
yeah, I guess I am having a kid.
Your alarm clock without a snooze button is
It's
on its
coming.
way.
I don't want to scare the mamas that ain't mamas yet. Already wakes me up
The
at
first
3
couple weeks are
o'clock.
going to be tough.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but
But
you
that's
can
why they're
trust the
so
Lord.
cute.
Yeah.
It's grace.
Yep.
Grace on grace on grace.
Timely conversation.
All right. Well, goodbye from the stoop for now. Not for him, but for me. For now.
Thanks for listening to the Stoop Sessions. Be sure to catch us next time. As One Hope exists to build healthy churches in the inner city, check us out and connect at www.onehope.gives.